that I come up with. But it turns out, I believe it's not so bad. I mean, it's the best construct I come up with, and it turns out not so bad, especially since I don't see Plan B out there. Now, does that address your point?
It does, but not totally. Here's why. Here's why.
Right.
Because you're trying to explain this universe which came into being because this potential was in some way actualized.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the potential is somehow or another infinite. Okay? Now, if it's infinite, it could have actualized itself in many different ways. That's a classical definition of God. I mean, God could have created whatever he wanted. Now, we all agree that God cannot violate certain rules of physics. The reason he can't violate them is because when he makes step one, he's stuck with 2, 3,
Agreed.
and 4.
Agreed.
Okay, but he doesn't have to. We all also agree in theoretical sense he doesn't have to make step one. Now, your potential, you see, here's what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that when you take a look at theories like the classical theory of evolution, I don't mean Darwin, that's out of business now.
Right.
I mean classical theory of evolution of today.
Right.
It has a problem in that it's deterministic.
There are many problems.
Yeah, but it has a problem that's deterministic. So when we try to join it to Judaism, which looks on the surface like it's easy, until you hit the determinism problem. So when you hit the determinism problem, you start sliding towards intelligent design. The problem of intelligent design is intelligent design assumes that certain physical science is science of God, and Jews can't have a physical. This flagellum wouldn't have been there.
What's the punchline? What's the punchline?
Okay, so the problem comes as follows: that in all of these, the objection of determinism. Now, if you can't allow your potential to theoretically create a world in which you do not need freedom in order to sustain the whole system, right? Then you've created a determinism which is stuck on God.
Okay, stop.
Can I defend you for a second?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
From what I understand,
Right.
There may be two motivations. What you're saying is that freedom, right? You're saying freedom is the kind of condition for the ultimate good, right? And so now, I'd say two things in your defense. One is that, as you acknowledged before, this is based on your own understanding of, in other words, you have to begin with your own experience, right? I mean, there is maybe, there's a development, but you ultimately have to begin from your understanding of good. Now, you can raise the question, well, perhaps there's a different understanding of good. Okay, but you have to begin from your own understanding.
Exactly.
The second point I'd say is that maybe you see your view as also, in some sense, conforming in a kind of very general way to our so-called scientific notions of an expanding universe, of a, sort of, so maybe you see a kind of coherence between that.
Yes.
Now,
Well, you mentioned the Big Bang over and over.
Yes.
Right.
You see, I feel that they're missing pieces in evolution, and they're missing pieces in Jewish theology, and I feel that, and they're missing pieces in biology, and they're missing pieces in anthropology, and they're missing pieces in every science, including physics and cosmology, etc. And respectfully, you will find if you plug this piece into it, Q4P, quest for potential, it does potentially fill out all the missing gaps in all these different areas. It's a big statement, but it happens to work. You name the field, and I will show you how it helps to fill in the missing pieces, including in evolution.
Well, we're talking right now about let's mention the Big Bang as the beginning of the thing which is supposedly happens in evolution.
Fair enough. Okay.
So now, if we mention the Big Bang, so the problem, once the Big Bang occurs, so it's generally assumed by people in that field that everything that happens thereafter has to have been pre-programmed.
No, it's not. It's incorrect. They're incorrect. That's incorrect. Those who posit that are incorrect.
It's easy to say this.
No.
But that's the way the theory works.
Their theory
is that way.
Because their theory is incomplete as well. They all fail to say.
If I want to join, your theory to it.
Right.
So it's easy to say that the quest for potential causes this form of implosion that results in the Big Bang.
Right.
In fact, points of view like that underlie all the attempts to unify religious views with the Big Bang. And remember that all the religious people jumped up and down when they said the Big Bang, so it proves there was creation, which is not necessarily clear because the Big Bang is itself dependent on some kind of previous physical entity, right? It may be proving Aristotle that the world's eternal.
Right.
Okay, but here's the point I want to ask you about.
Okay.
Which is that if the potential that is there in what is essentially, for all intents and purposes, the origin of the divine, using your term.
Precisely.
If that potential
Right.
is actualized in the Big Bang,
Yes.
then the question is, and this is a very technical thing, how does that potential, right, avoid becoming determinism? Because it has to.
No. Determinism is a strong word. Potential is wide open. We have to presume that the ultimate potentialities are pretty good in order to have had the traction to actualize the Big Bang. Meaning, if the ultimate end game is massive holocausts on 3,700 planets, I would be dubious that had retroactively had the traction to ignite creation. I have to have the presumption that the ultimate, on net balance, the ultimate end games are more tilting towards the positive than the negative. Now, nothing is deterministic. Nothing is deterministic. Between now and the end of this discussion is not deterministic. Whether any evolutionist or cosmologist who says it's deterministic is wrong, is my humble opinion, wrong. Only that's deterministic is that things will tend to evolve further. They might evolve a dead end, they might evolve negatively, they might evolve demonic, but things will tend to evolve. Why is that? Because they didn't tend to evolve, we would never have the traction to have a Big Bang in the first place. I hope that addresses your to some extent addresses your point. But why don't you have a follow-up?
Yeah, it does to some extent. I think that the missing
Right.
ingredient here.
Right, because I can articulate it.
Yeah, the missing ingredient here is this: that in order to have any form of God, so this, whatever we want to call it, force, whatever, because there's certain parallels, by the way, between you and Kaplan and also
Which Kaplan?
Mordechai Kaplan.
Let's be sure. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. Right.
Mordechai Kaplan.
Right.
And there was some Yiddish thinker whose name I don't remember that I heard about, but also Yechezkel Kaufman. But this Yiddish this Yiddish guy wrote similar stuff in the 20s,
Okay.
right? And before Kaplan, right before Kaplan started. And then also Yechezkel Kaufman, who I would take more seriously. And the reason I would take him more seriously is because Yechezkel Kaufman was struggling with the idea. Let's put it this way, he was going to build some kind of religious movement. He was a man who was deeply steeped in the biblical and Jewish tradition and in the experience of the Jews in history, and he's trying to explain that when he can't believe in a personal God. Now, in effect, the potential as the divine is very similar to the force that he talks about in the introduction to his History of the Religion of Israel, which underlies the whole development of the culture and civilization. And that's very similar now. The point is that is, in a certain sense, potential. Now, I would say that these guys were just talking about God, because I would agree with you, they're just talking about God. They just don't really talking about God, because they think that if God doesn't have the long white beard and all that stuff, right, and isn't, throwing plagues on the Egyptians, then that's not God. But of course, when you read even philosophers like Maimonides, they say many of these things are not to be taken literally. So the point is, they have God and they don't realize they have God. So that's the thing. So your potential is God before he did a lot of stuff. Okay? Now, if he's God before he did a lot of stuff, the question is, does he have absolute freedom? If he has absolute freedom, then we have to understand that he would have to as he actualizes, he has to retain that freedom. Because except for those aspects of freedom, which you correctly say, he surrenders because when he does X, it brings about Y. But that's still his freedom because he did it, right? So the point is that if he doesn't have freedom, so that gets to this question. Without telling the story for too long, I was talking to a colleague once in Israel. He said, I don't understand why people can't explain the Holocaust. Everybody knows, we've heard this a million times. Everybody knows what the Holocaust in order to create a state of Israel. So I asked them a question. I said, let me ask you a question. Are you going to tell me that an all-powerful God wants to create a state for his people, he's got to kill 6 million to give him a state? It's like crazy. I mean, somebody wants to give somebody a present, so he kills his brother. I mean, what are you talking about, right? So he said, I never thought of that. Actually, I never thought of that when I said, okay. Now, but the point is that the notion that any solution to any of these problems will always have proximate question, or antecedent question. The antecedent question here still remains, from our point of view as people who inhabit this universe, there's no question why you were right, that if there's no freedom, none of us would be able to achieve the good. There would be no good in the world. This is 100% right. I agree with you. But it still doesn't explain the question why this force of potential, which is really essentially proto-God, or whatever
Okay.
we call him, right?
Right.
Which means
Yes.
he's God. He's got the power to decide how to actualize himself. Why didn't he make a better decision? It's only for us that good and evil contradict one another. That's my point. By the way, this is similar with what it says in the Midrashim and the Zohar, that the light and the darkness were mixed up. Right, at the beginning, when God first started, they were already mixed up. He separated them. Meaning he created the rules for the intersection of good and evil, which is exactly what we're talking about now.
Okay, let's remember that.
He should have done a better job.
We're all brought up with the classic God of Israel's there,
Right.
and we're here. Okay. And at the risk of inciting a riot, in book 2, I say we're all part of this great, grander divine. It's not that God is there and we're here. We are all part of it, just like a red blood cell is a part of the Milky Way. We are all part of this grander divine. Is there a Godhead which gives the Torah to the Jews at Sinai? Maybe yes, maybe no. That's up to the individual predilection. But we're all part of this grander divine. And we all connect back to creation, you and I, and we all connect to eternity. We all connect to each other somehow. And this is the best we can do. Yes, we would all like the cosmos with no evil, but we could never have escaped from the void with that prerequisite.
According to the rules of this world.
According to the rules of this universe, and I'm dealing with this universe, right? These are the ground rules of the architecture. Because in order to divide, in my thesis, just like you split the atom, you create a hydrogen bomb, or create an atomic bomb to create a hydrogen bomb. You split 0 into positives and negatives, and you create a cosmos, male and female, good and evil, dark and night. So you have to split 0 at some point, Bereshit, to have a cosmos. You split 0, you end up with negatives and positives. It's not just Birnbaum, it's strong origins in Kabbalistic literature also, many other forms. It's the best we could do as part of the grander infinite divine. And ideally there would be no evil, but in order to be no evil, it has to be like they say you don't want to have pain, sit in the coffin. There's no pain in the coffin. There's never been creation.
I'm not sure that's an argument in the Gemara.
Right.
You can experience pain after death.
Right.
If someone learns Torah in front of them.
Yes, we'd all like many things. We'd all like eternal life. We'd all like children who only get A's. Like children. We'd all like many things. But it would seem that the architecture necessary to escape from the void was only deterministic to the extent that there has to be potential for evil as well. That's the